Hey folks, Dr. Gerstmar from Aspire Natural Health checking in with you all. It is day 18 of 21 of the 21-day Paleo Cleanse. Not much to report on a personal front other than that I'm looking forward to being finished. I'll tell you the first 7 days were fine. It was, something new to adjust to, so there was kind of that excitement. The second 7 days, everything rolled along just fine. The third 7 days, which I'm in the middle of right now, have been fine. I have no complaints. I'm just looking forward to getting back to, whole, real food for 3 meals a day. So everything's fine. Energy levels are good. Otherwise, doing really well. I wanted to talk today, we've talked about getting things out of your body. And that's what the 21-day Paleo Cleanse is all about, is increasing your body's ability to detoxify, getting some of that body burden out of your system. The other component, of course, is not just what you get out, but of course how much is coming in. So to go back to our bathtub analogy, you can empty out a bathtub by opening the drain. Ultimately you have to open the drain to empty the bathtub. But how much water remains in that bathtub is going to be a function of how much is going in versus how much is going out. So the point of this cleanse has been to open that drain, right? If we're imagining that that water is toxicity that are in our bodies, that body burden we have, the point is to, with the Paleo Cleanse, is to open the drain wider. But of course, how much we get out or how much is really left is going to be a function of how much is coming in the first place. So the best bet not to have to do cleanses or detoxification on a regular basis and to get the maximum benefit from doing this is going to also be to minimize our exposure. Right? And ultimately, even if you open the drain, but you're putting tons and tons of water in, you're still going to be left with a lot of water in the bathtub. So similarly, we need to watch what we put in. Now, for most of us, we are getting our toxicity from a couple of major places. We're getting it from food we put in our mouth, liquids that we put in our mouth. We're getting it from environmental exposures around us. So for most of us, that's going to be our home and our workplace. And lastly, we're going to be getting it from things we put on our skin. So those are the areas that we need to be cautious of, or we need to think about when it comes to reducing the amount that's coming in. So let me say this, there is no way, if you live in our modern world, and who doesn't, that you're going to be able to avoid all exposure, that you're not going to be able to get any. Because, face it, all the water on Earth, all the food on Earth, all the soil, all the air has these toxic compounds in it. We can do our best to reduce the exposure, but trying to take it too far for most of us is just a recipe for becoming neurotic and a little, overblown by it. So we want to do both sensible exposure and then sensible detox, unless of course we have some serious health issues that require more aggressive treatment. So let's talk about sensible ways to reduce our exposure. The first way, and that is available for many people, is going to be to simply choose organic whenever possible. So I recognize organic is more expensive. I also recognize not everyone can afford organic, and that is a real concern. For those of us who are able to afford organic, a lot of times the question is it really worth it? So, a few conflicting studies, but in general, organic food is going to be more nutritious because, in general, and not always, organic farmers are going to put more effort into cultivating healthy soil. Now, we know that's not always the case, and there is the agro-organic movement, which is just focused on making organic food as cheaply as possible, and we're not going to see that food being as nutritious as a real farmer, or let's put it this way, a real farmer committed to true organic principles, which is going to nurture the soil and grow soil along with food. Because just like we can only be as healthy as the food that we eat, our food, in this case vegetables we're talking about, can only be as healthy as the soil that it is grown in. On the flip side, we've seen that many foodstuffs are sprayed with an inordinate amount of toxicity. And a study that came out a little while ago, I believe it was from Denmark, but don't quote me on that one, showed that after 7 days of an organic diet, that the amount of toxic residues coming out of a family that they had selected, so they took a family eating regular conventional food, they'd done some testing of their urine to find out the toxic compounds that were coming out in their urine. They switched them to an organic diet for 7 days and retested their urine and found that those levels fell dramatically. So for most people, probably the single biggest source of toxicity is going to be the food that they eat. So when it comes to fruits and vegetables and plant materials, I recommend organic whenever possible. If price is the biggest problem and you simply can't afford it, then I again recommend the Environmental Working Group, EWG.org. You can go to their website and download their Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. They update it every year. The Dirty Dozen are the 12 fruits and vegetables that are most highly sprayed with herbicides and pesticides and other toxic compounds. The Clean 15 would be the conventionally grown fruits and vegetables that have the lowest amount of chemicals that are sprayed on them. So if you cannot afford organic, and I do understand that, then you would look to minimize or avoid entirely the Dirty Dozen, and you'd look to eat more of the Clean 15. On the flip side, of course, we recommend buying your animal products, again, as clean and, chemical-free as possible. So that would be, for your animals, that would be your pasture-raised, your grass-fed, your free-range animals, whenever possible. And again, trying to get from the best farmer possible, the farmer that is truly committed to those principles and not just paying lip service to it. Again, I recognize those can be expensive. And we've talked earlier that fat tends to store a lot of toxicity. So in general, if you're buying conventional animal products, we recommend that any of those meats be lower in fat because they will contain less of these toxic residues. All right, I can see time is quickly getting away, so I will cover one other piece tonight. We'll pick up with more sensible avoidance strategies tomorrow. The other piece is simply going to be water. So this is a big potential topic, and some other time I will do a full-on talk on water. But recognizing that most of us, thankfully, do have, safe water coming out of our taps. So people will say, why do I need to filter my water? Doesn't the water facility do that for me? And the answer is yes and no. The water, utility is mainly focused on preventing infections from coming in the water. So these are serious issues where in the world there are water issues, right? So things like diarrheas and other infections that hurt and kill people, that is the primary thing that the water utilities are after. They are not after filtering out all of the toxicity in water. In fact, study after study has shown that we're seeing a lot of toxic residues, including drug residues, in water, which is not a cool thing, right? A study showed that in the water here in Seattle that they found residues of cocaine, birth control pills, and antidepressant drugs. Not the best cocktail for all of us to be consuming, right? So it is important that we do get a water filter on our tap if we're going to drink out of the filter. If we're going to choose, and that is my top recommendation, because you could choose bottled waters. Some of them, of course, are going to be better and worse than others. It's a topic for another time, but much less cost effective and much less environmentally sound as well if we're concerned about the environment. And at the end of the day, this environmental toxicity comes down to how do we treat our environment. All right, folks, so I recommend some of the two biggest sources. The single biggest source, if you do nothing else, is to choose organic as much as possible. And if you cannot do that, to live by the Clean 15, the Dirty Dozen, and to choose your animal products that are lower in fat and thus lower in many of these compounds. The second is to get a water filter, and we could talk another time all about it because there are many choices. There are many people trying to sell you many things, and it is not always necessary to buy a very expensive super duper water filter when something more economical can serve most needs just as well. All right, folks, day 18, everything's going fine, a few days left, and we're talking about reducing intake. The last few days will also be going into transitioning off of the 21-day paleo cleanse. All right, so at Aspire Natural Health, we are experts at treating gut dysfunctions, autoimmune diseases, and other hard-to-treat cases. If that's you or someone you know, please contact us. We're happy to set up a complimentary 15-minute phone consultation with myself where we can discuss what's going on with you. We can see if the fit is right, and we can discuss next steps. All right, folks, until tomorrow, take care, and we'll see you then.